9 o'clock, so we will get started with Betty McQueen is up first. Betty, can you lead us through our press conference today?
Yes, thank you, Christine. I'd be happy to. Welcome to our press conference. My name is Betty McQueen, and I'm here representing childcare providers across the state. I'm joined today by Mackenzie Allen of Coeur d'Alene and a parent, Jane Gordon. We are here today to share our stories with the media related to the current crisis facing childcare in Idaho, and to ask the legislature to take immediate action to approve the almost $100 million in federal relief for the childcare programs in Idaho that has not yet been appropriated. We will plan to speak for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions after everyone speaks. The press conference is being recorded and will be shared online and with media. I'm excited to welcome our first speaker, Mackenzie Allen. Mackenzie, will you please take about 5 minutes to share your story?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, my name is Mackenzie Allen, and I'm the director of Circle of Care Montessori Preschool, and we provide childcare to families in the North Idaho area. And the impact of the coronavirus has been something that none of us could have prepared for. Through the many difficulties and struggles we faced, we were most impacted by the families of non-essential workers, as 50% of our families were considered non-essential under the state stay-at-home order that was implemented. These families could no longer afford to keep their children enrolled with us due to their loss of employment. And families who lost income as a result of the pandemic struggled with losing their placement, as our center is such a huge part of their lives, but could not afford to keep their children in care while temporarily out of work. And even while not knowing what would come of everything, we chose to make the very important yet difficult decision to stay open for the children of non-essential workers, which include our children with developmental disabilities. However, in staying open, we lost a substantial amount of revenue due to the reduced number of children enrolled and suffered loss of employees. And in 1 year, we lost 8 employees. This pandemic has affected so many of us, and it has been a daily struggle to maintain our workforce due to things like illness, stress, and not being able to meet the enhanced unemployment benefits that are being offered. To compensate for this, we chose to raise wages of our workforce by 27% and hire additional full-time staff to cover the many absences and illnesses, which in turn only added to our loss of revenue already coming from fewer children already in our center. However, this at times was still not even enough. I have consistently had to cover shifts of employee absences and illnesses. And as the director of the center, this makes it nearly impossible to be able to properly do my duties as the director and ensure an efficient and successful center. On top of that, we now face the issue of our staff being priced out of the housing markets of North Idaho and leaving to go work in Washington for better rate of pay. Just in the past 2 years, the housing market in North Idaho has increased year over year by 51%. And we could, of course, increase wages again. However, in doing so, we would need to raise childcare tuitions also. Families are so exhausted and stretched thin. They need quality care for their children and care that they can afford. Our children spend so much of their lives with us at school. It is crucial for their child's well-being to nurture and support them in their development. This means having competent staff and full classrooms, which is only possible with the proper funding. We are truly dedicated to serving the children of Idaho and have remained committed to keeping our doors open during the coronavirus. Our center welcomes special needs children, as I mentioned before, and consistency of care is extremely important to them and their families. What we really need right now is support from the legislators in accepting child care relief funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. This will allow us to maintain safe and successful operation and support our staff in these immensely difficult times. As the director, this additional funding is crucial for our center to prepare and support our families and students for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mackenzie, for sharing your story. I'd now like to take 5 minutes to give a few more details about the childcare crisis in Idaho. I have had the privilege of working with and on behalf of Idaho's children and families for over 30 years. I'm a faculty member of BYU Idaho in Rexburg and have served as an instructor for early childhood education courses for nearly 20 years. Before that, in 1990, I moved to Boise with my family and opened a small licensed family child care program in my home. I loved working with the children and families who came to me, and their business provided me with a small monthly income to supplement my husband's modest salary. The service I provided these families allowed their parents to work for Idaho Power, Marsing School District, Hewlett-Packard, local banks, local doctors' offices, the Western Idaho State Fair, and many other local businesses. The childcare industry provided critical and foundational support to Idaho's economy then, and it does so today. The childcare industry in Idaho has always been a fragile industry, but since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the childcare industry in Idaho has been in crisis. Childcare is collapsing in Idaho. Most providers have been operating at a loss over the last year. Enrollment is down, overhead remains high, and businesses are struggling to hire qualified teachers. In fact, just since September, over 200 childcare programs have closed their doors. And this presents a problem not only for childcare providers. Crisis in the childcare industry is also a crisis for Idaho's economy. When employees lose access to high-quality childcare programs, employers suffer an estimated $414 million in costs to absent employees and turnover rates. In addition, Idaho loses an estimated $65.4 million in tax revenue. Although providers have greatly appreciated the 6 months of grant support they have received, it is not enough to keep child care doors open in the future. Child care providers need a commitment of long-term relief from Idaho leaders in order to continue operating. And we need to keep parents working. As more child care providers close their doors permanently, parents will have even less choice and ability to find child care in their community. The child care industry is crumbling. Without it, there will be no one left to watch our children. Providing relief to child care providers will allow parents to go to school, get jobs, and remain employed. The legislature must take immediate action to solve this crisis by approving the almost $100 million in federal relief not yet appropriated. Millions of dollars in federal relief have been set aside to save Idaho's childcare industry, but without action by the Idaho legislature, childcare programs will not be able to access those funds. Governor Little has recommended that the legislature accept $99 million in the American Rescue Plan Act for childcare relief in fiscal year 2022, but the legislature has not yet taken action to accept most of those dollars. We strongly urge the legislature to pass a full appropriation for this relief before going home. Idaho's children deserve the best we can offer them in terms of loving, nurturing care from childcare providers who are well qualified and well paid. We are teetering on the brink of a disaster. We are not far from falling into a situation in which only the wealthy will be able to afford childcare, and the most needy and vulnerable of Idaho's citizens will bear the greatest costs. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to invite Jane Gordon to provide some concluding thoughts.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jane Gordon. I live in Boise. I have 2 young sons. Elliot is 3.5, and Ollie will be 1 in 3 days. Even before this pandemic, quality childcare was not abundant in our community. I signed up for wait lists when I was 12 weeks pregnant with Elliot. I signed up for several daycare centers. I wasn't off the wait list until Elliot was several months old. I'm an attorney and my husband is a small business owner. Thankfully, we were essential workers during the pandemic, and we also had the ability to work remotely, which made the closure of the, we go to Giraffe Lab, so it made the closure of Giraffe Lab a little bit easier, that we could both be at home trying to wrangle the kids. This entire year has been rough on everybody. Everyone's routines were completely blown up, and we're still trying to regain our footing. Access to affordable quality childcare is a big part of our family returning to normal and our economy and our state returning to normal. Childcare affects the whole family, and it does disproportionately affect women. I've seen my colleagues reduce their work hours and pause their careers to become stay-at-home moms because of the childcare issues the pandemic caused. I don't know how many families in the Treasure Valley and beyond can afford to live on a single income, and what happens when single parent households to the centers if they close. Quality childcare is a building block of our society. It is truly the foundation of our economy. I know that I'm privileged to be able to send my kids to a community that they absolutely love and where they are loved. Elliot comes home with stories about his friends and his activities during the day. I get photos of Ollie playing with his almost toddler friends. I couldn't do my work if I was worried about them all day. The weeks where daycare was closed were a tremendous disruption to our family. Elliot would ask me daily when he would see his friends again. He would ask when he could see his teachers. My husband and I were swapping 3 and 4 hour chunks of our day in an attempt to carve out some work. But if you've ever been around young children, it's not as easy as just going by the calendar and switching between my husband and I. I can't do my best work when I'm scrambling to figure out a childcare schedule. More importantly, I can't be the best mom when I'm trying to squeeze in work from my phone in the living room, or I'm trying to field calls while making mac and cheese. I don't know what we would do if our center closes. We would have a radical change in our lifestyle. I love my work as an attorney. It makes me really happy. My husband loves his work, and obviously we love our children. This money must be approved. Idaho needs quality childcare so people can go back to work. Childcare workers are essential to this economy. If we don't have childcare, our state is not going to have an economic recovery. The quality childcare needs to be accessible to everyone, and the State House has in its power to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. That completes our prepared comments. We would now like to open it up for questions from the media. Does anyone have any questions?
We have one question in the questions box, and it's from Betsy Russell. Betsy, I'll give you a second if you wanted to unmute to ask. If not, I will read it.
Sure. So my first question is, what actions will you all be taking today, along with those you're affiliated with, to get this message across to members of the legislature?
Thank you, Betsy. Does anybody want to talk about some of the activities going on today? I can also add in.
I know a lot of centers statewide are closed. My toddler's going to come screaming in here in a second. A lot of centers are closed. I have to actually go get him.
I'll jump in go ahead, Jane. So providers and parents and concerned citizens came together today for a day of action around saving childcare. And there's a whole variety of ways that everybody is participating today, from folks sharing their stories with legislators, calling the governor, and then showing up at the Capitol to really help legislators see how much of a crisis this issue really is and how important it is to hundreds, if not thousands, of families across the state of Idaho. Anybody else want to talk about what you're up to today? All right, any more questions? We have one more that came in. Betsy, you asked, do we know how many centers have closed today? Would you like, as of today, the latest data we had was from about 2 months ago, and I believe it was just a little over 220 centers had closed within the last year, had closed their doors permanently. Betty, did you have any other numbers or details on that?
No, that's the most recent information I have as well.
So I actually meant as far as part of today's action, in which a number of centers have closed for the day as part of this effort to get the message across. Do you know how many across the state have done so?
I believe so. It's hard to say because this has been really a provider-driven initiative and action, and so there's a lot of different chains and networks and conversations being activated. Somebody did a loose count, and we had about 40 centers that we knew were participating in the day of action by either taking part in some way, shape, or form. And I will say we did a quick count of the 40 centers, and they serve a total of about 4,800 children.
Are they all located in the Treasure Valley area, or are there some elsewhere as well?
That's a really great question. Majority are in the Treasure Valley because they were coming to the Idaho State Capitol. But again, we do have groups participating across the state. And Mackenzie, I don't know, you might be able to speak about a little bit more, Betty, what's happening in your area.
I don't know how many centers in my area are closed today. We're still open, so I'm not quite sure on that number.
And I'm not certain about the numbers in Eastern Idaho either.
Thank you for the question. Any more questions?
Looks like we have one more question in the chat from Rachel Roberts. How many more centers do you think could be forced to close if this legislation isn't passed? And that's a good question. We know there are many other centers that are just teetering on the brink of having to close their doors.
And I was going to see, Mackenzie, do you want to respond to that as well?
Yes, I was actually going to say we fortunately did not close our center, but we did have to close one entire classroom due to the fact that we could not find teachers, things like that.
Thank you. And a question in the chat from Betsy Russell. How many centers are there total in the state?
Betsy, we will get those exact numbers to you, including how many have received different assistance or grants in the past as well. I don't have that on hand right now, but we will get that. And we'll include it in our press release when we follow up after this with media. Any other questions? Okay, with that, Betsy, would you like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll sign off?
Yes, thank you very much for attending our press conference this morning and learning more about the child care crisis in Idaho and the opportunity the lawmakers have to address it. Again, we ask the legislature to approve the almost $100 million in federal relief for Idaho's child care workers. Thank you very much.